The official policy, once again, we've seen this so many times, is to trust the private sector, to trust for-profit multinationals to essentially police themselves, and in this case, police and manage their supply chains, even in the case of products as critical to lives as baby formula. Now, the empty shelves in this country pretty much speak for themselves as to how that policy is shaking out. But to add to that evidence, here's FDA Commissioner Califf again.
You would think that a critical industry like this would have resilience plans, redundancy, but we don't even have legal authority right now to require that the firms have a plan for potential failures and resilience. That's something we've asked Congress for every year for a while, and we're asking for it again. So I hope that it happens this time.
I am so damn tired of being lied to. I don't think I can deny it anymore. You can stick to your story if you think it flies, but I'm not gonna buy it anymore.
Hello, my darling, and thank you for listening to the 254th episode of Congressional Dish. I'm your host, Jennifer Briney. If this is your first time listening to Congressional Dish, I'm a dork, and I pay a lot of attention to Congress. And today, I wanted to know what Congress had found out and did about the fact that we are missing baby formula all over the United States. There are parents in states all over this country that are going and finding not a limited supply, but no supply whatsoever of baby formula. And this is a life or death situation for their children. And so I wanted to know, what is our government doing about it? And so I went down the rabbit hole, and I have some things to tell you today. Because what I learned in the process of researching the baby formula shortage is that this is actually a bigger issue than the shortage itself. This is actually a story about food safety and monopoly powers and corporate policing in a global economic system. And so to gather the information I'm going to share with you today, I read a bunch of articles and documents. I interviewed a lactation expert, Barbara Hardin. So thank you, Barbara, for your time. Unfortunately, the audio quality of our recording was very bad, so I don't have any clips for you, but she did give me wonderful information. I also have 3 hearings that I listened to and I collected clips from, so you'll hear from the witnesses themselves. And I read one new law that Congress has passed, Biden has signed, and that is going to do something to help with the baby formula shortage. Fun fact about that law, though, it was signed at the same exact time as the law that provided that additional $40 billion to Ukraine that we talked about in the last episode of Congressional Dish. But the baby formula law got far less news coverage, and so today you will learn the details. But basically, when it comes to baby formula is important because babies need food. Now, many babies get their food from boobies, but other babies don't. And those babies are often fed with baby formula. Now, not all baby formulas are the same. There is a liquid kind, but for today's episode, we're going to be focusing on the powder kind. And powder baby formula is basically a fancy, highly regulated, almost always corporately manufactured powder that are mixed with hot water and then cooled to be fed to a baby via a bottle. But that's not the only kind of baby formula. Some children require special kinds of formula because they have gastrointestinal issues or food allergies. Also, not all formulas are for babies. There are some older humans that use formula as their primary or even sole source of nutrition if they need it to grow or for other medical reasons that I am not aware of. But basically, baby formula prevents starvation of babies who can't or won't breastfeed and provides life-saving nutrition to other humans in need. Baby formula is one of life's essentials, and it is something that we want to be available to anyone who needs it at any time. Now, here in the United States, it turns out that there are only 3 companies, Abbott, Mead Johnson, and Nestle, that produce 98% of the baby formula supply in the United States. And Abbott alone provides 43% of the baby formula in our country under different brand names, which is why you might not be aware that these are all one company. Abbott produces Similac, Alimentum, and Elecare. They have different names, but they're the same damn thing. And as you may have heard, the world just experienced a global pandemic, which isn't exactly over yet. And the pandemic fucked with the entire global economy. And because decisions over the last decades were made to stop manufacturing things in the United States and instead spread manufacturing and supply chains all over the world, well, when humans all over the world had to stay home to avoid a killer virus, supply chains were disrupted, and that affected baby formula manufacturers. And the situation got worse in February, when one of Abbott's baby formula manufacturing plants in Michigan had to be shut down. And that shutdown has exacerbated a baby formula shortage all over the country, which has continued as of this recording in late June 2022. Now, the reason why this one plant in Sturgis, Michigan, shutting down is so significant is that half of Abbott's baby formula is produced in that one plant. And since Abbott makes almost half of the supply in the United States, that means that roughly a quarter of our nation's baby formula was pulled out of the market all at once when that one plant went down. Now, this happened in February, but the first sign of trouble was actually back in 2021, back in September, when the Food and Drug Administration, who are the baby formula police, when they were told about a cronobacter infection in a baby who had drank baby formula that was produced in Abbott's Sturgis, Michigan facility. Now, cronobacter infections can give newborns sepsis and meningitis, which are two conditions that can be fatal. And so this was very serious. But after testing a sample of Abbott's baby formula, the FDA did not find cronobacter in their sample. And so life went on. They didn't do anything. But then in December 2021, a second baby who had been drinking baby formula produced by Abbott in the Sturgis facility came down with a cronobacter infection too. But again, the FDA tested Abbott's formula and found no cronobacter. But because this was the second infection reported to the FDA of an infection in a baby that had been fed formula from the same facility, finally on December 6th, so 3 months after the first infection was reported, and 2 months after a whistleblower had reported unsanitary conditions at the Sturgis factory to the authorities, well, it took until December 6th for the FDA to finally schedule an inspection of the Sturgis facility. But that inspection didn't actually take place for almost 2 more months. It didn't take place until January 31st, 2022. And during that waiting period, a third baby who had been drinking Abbott's baby formula from the Sturgis facility came down with cronobacter infection, which again was reported to the FDA. So the FDA finally gets around to inspecting the damn place, and this is what they found. Here's Dr. Robert Califf. He is our current commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration, so he's the top guy at the FDA. And here he is testifying to the House Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions on May 26th.
Frankly, the inspection results were shocking. Standing water, cracks in key equipment that present the potential for bacterial contamination to persist, particularly in the presence of moisture, leaks in the roof, a previous citation of inadequate hand washing, and current poor foot sanitation, bacteria growing from multiple sites, and many signs of a disappointing lack of attention to the culture of safety in this product that is so essential to the lives of our most precious people.
Clearly, the conditions were atrocious in the Sturgis facility. But the question is, did the babies get sick because of it? Here's Susan Main. She's the director at the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition at the FDA, speaking to Representative John Joyce of Pennsylvania.
What the data show is we can't rule in or rule out whether or not those infants, their cronobacter was caused by this plant. The data just simply can't be used to inform it. We do
by the genetic testing you did, by the genetic testing that you did, it does not match from the plant, correct?
That is correct, but what we did not have is any sampling done at the same time that the product was manufactured that was consumed by the individuals who got sick. So we didn't have that.
Thank you, Director.
So we know that by the end of all this, 4 babies got sick and 2 babies died, all of whom had drank formula from the Sturgis facility. But we don't know for sure if that was the cause because the FDA doesn't have the samples that it needs to make that determination. And so basically, we'll never know for sure. But the FDA, when they did inspect the plant, tested all over the facility for cronobacter. And this is what happened during that inspection.
As soon as we received positive cronobacter results from environmental samples at the facility that we collected during the inspection, we contacted Abbott to ask the company to issue a voluntary recall. The need to take urgent action to protect the most vulnerable of all of our people, infants, presented a dilemma. This was the largest plant of the dominant manufacturer, and it was the sole source of a number of metabolic formulas essential for viability of infants with no substitution possible because Abbott had no backup plan. We knew that ceasing plant operations would create supply problems, but we had no choice given the insanitary conditions.
I just want to take a hot second here and just simmer on the voluntary recall. Voluntary. This is a facility that had a leaky roof and standing water. It was a literal breeding ground for bacteria. And they found bacteria all over the place. The FDA commissioner didn't say this, but we also know that employees at the facility were falsifying safety records. And then most importantly, this facility definitely tested positive for cronobacter. And 4 babies who had been drinking formula from that facility had been hospitalized with those exact germs. 2 of them died. And yet the police are asking them pretty please for a recall? This is just like the rock and play sleeper. Like, when we break a law, do the police ask us pretty please to stop murdering? Or do they shoot us in the head? Do they shut down the lawbreakers if they're caught in the middle of breaking the law? But when a corporation breaks a law, it's pretty please stop what you're doing. We have 2 dead babies from baby formula produced in a filthy factory. Pretty please take it off the shelves. The rock and play sleeper, produced by Fisher-Price, killed at least 30 babies. Pretty please take it off the shelves. And by the way, while we're talking about the rock and play, I just found out from my favorite member of Congress, Katie Porter of Irvine, that 13 more babies died in Fisher-Price products than we knew about when I recorded that episode about the rock and play sleeper, which I titled AWOL Recall, and you should probably listen to it. But in addition to the rock and play inclined sleeper, which did get recalled after about 10 years on our shelves, babies have also died in the infant to toddler rocker, which is still available in stores today. These corporations are not prioritizing the safety of our children, and the corporation police can't tell these companies what to do. Can't tell these companies what to do. At least in the case of the rock and play sleeper, which is policed by the Consumer Product Safety Commission, they don't have the authority because Congress has not allowed them to tell us about dangerous products without the permission from the company. That's law in Section 6B of the Consumer Product Safety Act, which is a part of the law that has not been repealed. And so, like I said, if you haven't heard it yet, you have to listen to Congressional 234 AWOL Recall because it's so connected to this. And the information that I learned in that episode about Fisher-Price and our consumer safety inspection system is fucking nuts, and it hasn't been fixed. But while I'm down this rabbit hole, to be clear, that's not to say that nothing has been done. Because on May 16th, President Biden signed the Safe Sleep for Babies Act, which is a simple 2-page law that straight up bans, quote, inclined sleepers for infants, regardless of the date of manufacture, unquote. And so specifically, that means it will be illegal to sell an inclined sleeper with more than a 10-degree incline in the United States when this goes into effect. The law also will ban crib bumpers, which are fluffy things that cover the insides of cribs. It's like bowling bumpers, but for sleeping babies. But those fluffy bumpers, you won't be able to sell those in the US either. Again, when this goes into effect, this doesn't start until November 12th. So basically, this corporate-friendly Congress gave the corporations 6 more months to continue selling products that we know have killed dozens of babies. Again, this is a different system of justice than what us normies have. Like when the police arrest drug dealers, are the dealers given 6 months to sell their remaining stash? Because it's not like it's going to take 6 months for the word to get out that this is law now. We don't communicate via horsies and carrier pigeons anymore. There have been congressional hearings. Legislation has been publicly discussed and demanded for years. this should be effective immediately. But kid gloves on corporations always when it comes to these recent Congresses. But good news will be coming as of November 12th. This dangerous thing will be banned. It took a decade, but it's banned. And this is a problem that got solved in a 2-page bill, which shows you that simple laws are possible. And these packages that they keep creating with a bunch of shit put in them that lead to nothing, that's a strategy. That's willful inaction. But in this case, a good thing happened in law. And so real quick, who did this? Who gets the credit? Well, the bill is credited to Representative Tony Cardenas of California. He represents part of the San Fernando Valley in Southern California. And he got it started in the House Committee on Energy and Commerce's Subcommittee on Consumer Protection and Commerce, which is chaired by Jan Schakowsky of Illinois. And I just have to say that I've been watching Congress for a lot of years now. And when it comes to protecting us from corporate negligence, there's Jan Schakowsky, trying to do that for us time and time again. And so I'm not surprised and am very pleased to see her guide her committee to get this very simple bill over the finish line. And I'm happy to tell you that this one passed without a vote. This one was truly uncontroversial, as you would hope it would be. And so it's nice to see something positive for us normies get done in Congress. This proves that it can and does happen. But goddamn, there's so much work to be done. Which brings me back to baby formula. So, multinational corporation Abbott is running a cronobacter breeding facility that also produces about a quarter of our nation's baby formula. Well, after the FDA's January 31st inspection of that facility, the FDA asked the company, pretty please, for a voluntary recall of the baby formula that they suspect, but couldn't prove, had already hospitalized 3 babies, and at least one of them had died. And it took 18 more days, but then on February 17th, a 4th baby was hospitalized. So we now have 4 hospitalized babies, 2 of them dead, and that's when the corporation issued the recall. 3 months later, Abbott signed a consent decree with the Food and Drug Administration, which is a legally binding agreement, in this case, setting the terms that Abbott would have to meet in the Sturgis facility before they could legally restart the baby formula production. And here's how getting that company to sign the consent decree went. Here's FDA Commissioner Califf.
We saw the lack of quality in the system and the lack of accountability for the problems that were there. And so we had to invoke the Justice Department to negotiate a consent decree, which is essentially Abbott saying, yes, we had all these problems. Here's exactly what we're going to do to fix them. For legal reasons, I can't discuss the exact details of the negotiation, but let's just say that it took a little arm wrestling to get to the point where the Justice Department got Abbott to sign the consent decree.
Pretty please is not effective. Arm wrestling was required. Now flash forward, and Abbott Sturgis facility, after getting approval from the FDA, reopened their fixed-up Sturgis facility on June 4th, and it stayed operating for 11 days. As of this recording, the Sturgis facility remains closed. Now, the reason this time wasn't because of their own negligence, it was extreme weather. The facility flooded after thunderstorms and extreme rainfall. But the point is that the end of this story isn't written yet. The Sturgis facility is still closed. And since that is our reality right now, here's the advice from the hearings about what you can do if you need baby formula in the United States right now. So first up, here's Chairman of the Committee on Energy and Commerce, Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations, Representative Diana DeGette. In this clip, she's going to be speaking to Robert Cleveland, who is the Senior Vice President of the Nutrition Business Unit for U.S. and Europe at Mead Johnson, which is one of the 3 corporations that makes up the U.S. baby formula cartel.
Or like, let's say my daughter, who has a 6-week-old baby, called me up and said, I need to get some formula for my baby, and my store shelves are bare. What can we tell them between now and all of the emergency measures we put into place start putting formula on the shelves? Who should they call? Where can they go to try to get some of this limited product right now? What's the practical suggestion?
It's very unfortunate you have to answer that question or ask that question, but let me do my best to answer it.
Thank you.
I think the shelves, the reality is they don't have anywhere near the product that they do. So one of the things I've often said during this crisis is, it takes a village to raise a child. In this case, sometimes it's taking a village to find infant formula. So the first thing to do is work with your network of family and friends, and as they go to the stores, look for the product that's there. And I've seen many mothers and grandmothers and fathers and cousins doing this on the shelf. You can call our consumer response center. Now, to be fair, those folks are doing a phenomenal job of fielding waves and waves of calls, but we will help you if you call. That's one other resource. The physician's office is another. Sometimes they do have the samples that are required, and they can help transition between finding product on the shelf. And then I would be sure to look online as well as in person at the store and be open to other formats. Many mothers have a particular, or fathers have a particular type of format they like. You may need to be more flexible in the format that you use, but all infant formula regulated by the FDA is safe for your infant, whether it's a liquid or a powder or what size it's in. And so I would say shop widely, see your doctor or enroll your family friends, give us a call if you need to, and be flexible.
And here's the FDA Commissioner, Robert Califf, with contact information for help from the government.
Really important for people to go to the HHS website, hhs.gov/formula. There you'll find the hotline for all the manufacturers and helpful information about where to go.
And if you're someone who doesn't want to switch formula brands or is now justifiably concerned about baby formula in general, there is another option. Here's Representative Ann Custer of New Hampshire talking to Susan Main. She's, again, the Director for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition at the FDA.
I know that in this part of the country, I'm in New Hampshire, we have milk banks of mother's breast milk. And I'm wondering, what is the regulation by the FDA, and can we assure our constituents that breast milk from a milk bank is safe and is thoroughly vetted by the FDA?
You're asking some very good questions. I'm going to refer this to Dr. Main, who probably would have the best answer.
Thank you, Congresswoman. So human breast milk is regulated as a food. And so that is reassuring. And they have to have proper screening protocols and things like that in place to make sure that the donors that are donating the milk, that's critical for human food safety. So that's how I would respond. Thank you.
And finally, here's something that they are telling parents not to do. Here's Ginger Carney. She's the Director of Clinical Nutrition at the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital.
I would want to warn parents not to make homemade formulas. The American Academy of Pediatrics warns against that, as well as they should not dilute the formula, as both of these situations can lead to disastrous results and lead possibly to hospital admissions.
And as for how long we can expect the shortages to continue, that's unclear. And that's not just because of what's happening at the Sturgis plant. That's going to reopen again, and it takes 6 to 8 weeks for the formula from that facility to make its way onto the shelves after that. But the shortage didn't start because of this one facility. It made it worse, but it was caused by supply chain problems, and there are apparently more of those on the horizon. Here's Chris Calamari. This guy is the Senior Vice President of U.S. Nutrition at Abbott.
On the horizon, we see in the manufacture of infant formula, agricultural oils are absolutely essential. Paper is absolutely essential. The cost of fuel to supply and distribute the product is essential. So I would call out those key elements ranging from agricultural oils to the cost to deliver the product would be the biggest areas of focus.
And the war in Ukraine, which we learned in the last episode is being purposefully prolonged by the Biden administration's policy, and of course by face Vladimir Putin. But that war in Ukraine, that could affect production of baby formula too. Here's Susan Main again, the Director of the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition at the FDA.
What we've seen is first the strain of the COVID-19 pandemic, then the strain of the recall, and now we've got the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And one of the things that we know is the Ukraine region is one of the world's biggest exporters of products like sunflower oil. Sunflower oil is used as an ingredient in many food products, including infant formula. And so we have been working with the manufacturers, should they be unable to maintain their supply of sunflower oil, what they would replace it with, and make sure that that would meet the nutritional requirements for infant formula.
And so basically, we don't know how long there are going to be shortages, but I'm sorry to tell you that parents, you should prepare yourselves for this to maybe be for a while. But the good news is that the Biden administration did act. And even with the Sturgis plant closed and with looming supply chain problems, there is reason to hope that it won't be so hard to find baby formula for that much longer. Because the Biden administration arranged for the United States to receive international humanitarian aid via their Operation Fly formula. Specifically, the Biden administration authorized the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Health and Human Services to use FedEx airplanes paid for by the Defense Department to fly in baby formula produced in other countries. So far, baby formula has been flown into the United States from Germany, Australia, and the UK. And then Abbott, the company that fucked up their Sturgis plant, they're also flying in some of their formula that's being produced in Ireland and in Spain, which goes to show that there are other brands in this world that are safe, but we don't get access to them. Only in this emergency are we getting some competition in this cartel-captured market in the United States. And this reality was discussed in the hearings. Here's Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida speaking to Brian Ronholm. He is the Director of Food Policy at Consumer Reports.
We know that in Europe, they consistently produce a baby formula surplus, but there are rigid labeling and nutritional requirements for formula containers here in the U.S. that the FDA requires, and they prohibit the sale of many European-made products, even though the formulas themselves meet FDA nutritional and purity standards. So what sort of policy changes would you like to see undertaken to ease restrictions on baby formula imports while still ensuring that the product meets our safety standards?
Yeah, I think it's critical that we maintain those safety standards that FDA has set on infant formula. That's absolutely critical. So there's a comfort level with consumers when they're able to purchase something that they know is an FDA inspected facility overseas. But to your point, sometimes these regulations, these really strict regulations are thinly disguised trade protection measures. And so, that's certainly an issue that we'd have to examine carefully to make sure that we can have that access.
So the guy from Consumer Reports clearly thinks that protecting the cartel is a factor. But I do want to point out that there was another side to the debate that was discussed in the hearings. So let's go on over to the Senate. Here's Senator Richard Burr of North Carolina speaking to FDA Commissioner Robert Califf on May 26th.
Why haven't you waived labeling requirements from trusted manufacturers in countries like the UK, Australia, or Canada? Couldn't manufacturers provide temporary labels on imported formula cans if the label is printed in a language other than English until U.S. manufacturing is restored? Some countries have higher nutritional requirements. Why can't we provide a waiver for their products to come into the country?
We've waived many of the requirements, the ones that make sense, but the directions have to be clear to Americans in language that's understandable so that the formula can be mixed up correctly. An error in mixing up the formula, for example, can lead to a very sick infant not getting the right nutrition.
But I'm with Senator Burr there. Seems like there's an easy fix. Allow the formula into the country and require the labels be in English. The problem, though, preventing imports of perfectly safe formulas. The problem preventing competition and choices in the U.S. market, which would prevent a huge shortage if one company fucks up in one plant. Well, the problem isn't the labeling. That's not what prevents these imports. The problem is that laws have been designed during the millennial lifetime to create and protect the formula cartel, leaving the United States reliant on this company, Abbott, and the other two, whether they deserve to operate in this country or not based on their proven performance. Here's FDA Commissioner Robert Califf on May 25th.
Abbott's enormous market share left it with a responsibility for producing safe infant formula that was not met. We will do everything in our power to work with Abbott to make this happen as quickly as safely possible. But this timing is in Abbott's control.
In Abbott's control. If there is one thing that is clear, it's that too much is in Abbott's control. The way we got ourselves into a situation where this one company controls almost half of the U.S. supply of a life's essential product, and where three companies control 98% of our supply, is in large part due to the Infant Formula Act of 1980. The Infant Formula Act of 1980 governs how companies get licenses to sell baby formula in the United States. Under the terms of that law, it's very tough to qualify for a license to sell baby formula in the United States. New companies that want to get into the market have to conduct studies and tests of all of their ingredients, conduct nutritional tests, and their suppliers need to pass all kinds of tests as well. And this makes sense. Babies are the most sensitive and precious humans, and we need to make sure there is nothing dangerous in their food. But there are other hurdles to entering the U.S. market that are not as understandable. Despite there being millions and millions of babies in the United States, with new customers being born every day, there's only one company that baby formula companies here in the States can hire to actually make the formula, Perrigo Nutritionals. And that company will not work with customers that don't have huge orders. This means that only huge companies can get their products made inside of the United States, unless the new company wants to build their own factory, which is a whole other upfront cost and set of regulatory hurdles that are simply just too high for most startups to clear. Only a total of 4 companies have pulled it off, Abbott obviously being one of them. But it's not just understandably strict regulations that prevent competitors from entering the U.S. market. The U.S. government is distorting the market via the WIC program. The biggest buyer of infant formula in the United States is WIC, which is the nickname for the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children. This is a program that provides food for families who are close to the poverty level. The WIC program is run by the Department of Agriculture. And about half of American mothers in the United States get their baby formula through the WIC program, which we should just find atrocious because it just goes to show how out of hand our financial inequality has gotten in this country if half of our mothers can qualify for this welfare program. But the way the federal government has set this up, or I should say the way that laws passed by Congress have forced most states to set this up, is that each state essentially contracts with only one company, and therefore the parents who get their baby formula through WIC can only get formula produced by that one chosen company in their state. Congress chose to structure the system this way for cost-cutting reasons, to save money. Because unlike Social Security and Medicare, programs that by law have to pay benefits to everyone who's eligible, WIC is only available to people who qualify if Congress has provided the money for the program. So this WIC program is subject to the whims of the Congress's generosity in those huge multi-thousand-page funding laws that are passed late every year. Now, the good intention behind the policy is that by saving money, the Government Accountability Office estimates that the WIC program has been able to provide food and formula to an additional 2 million American families every year, which is clearly a good thing. But that cost cutting has consequences too. The process for WIC baby formula contracting, which has been used since 1989, it's kind of complicated, but it boils down like this. Every 4 years, the Department of Agriculture forces the states to hold auctions for contracts for baby formula, and then they give one giant contract to the lowest bidder. The companies then pay for the discount that they give to the government to win that contract by charging everyone else approximately 30% more. So that low cost, it doesn't come from Abbott or Mead Johnson or Nestle's profit margins. It comes from the pockets of the parents who actually pay for their children's food, who are parents who also pay taxes. So essentially, parents who are not on WIC are paying for baby formula twice. The WIC contracts are a big problem, and it's not just me saying that. Here's Michael Gay, the owner and manager of Food Fresh, which is a grocery store in Georgia.
WIC infant formula cost containment measures have led to extreme consolidation in the formula marketplace, leaving it highly vulnerable to supply disruptions like we are experiencing now. These contracting policies must be reviewed to ensure future food security of the nation's babies and families.
Extreme consolidation equals cartel. 3 companies supplying the whole nation, which is a result of the Department of Agriculture essentially forcing states to set up a legal monopoly on baby formula on the state level with sole source contracts. And this distorts the entire market for baby formula in the states. Again, about half of mothers in the United States get baby formula from the WIC program. And so, think about it from the competitor's perspective. What's the point of making the effort to distribute your company's baby formula in a state where half the customers are not even allowed to buy it? And so what happens is that the company that gets the WIC contract basically gets the market in that state, selling their product to both the WIC recipients and other parents, even though the other parents are allowed to buy whatever they want. The problem is that the choice for those parents that are paying out of pocket, the choice isn't there for them because the other companies choose to sell their products in the states where they have the WIC contract. And so the three companies have largely, thanks to government laws, they've essentially been able to carve up the country by state. And other companies, while technically allowed to get licenses to sell in this country, practically they aren't. Because all the other companies that are not Abbott, Nestle, and Mead Johnson make up only 2% of our market. Which brings me back to Abbott, because Abbott's the biggie. Abbott has monopoly WIC contracts in 34 states. And so this is why the shortages are being experienced so heavily in some states, like Minnesota, Connecticut, Hawaii, Iowa, Louisiana, Maryland, and both of the Dakotas, Rhode Island, and Texas. In those states, that's where parents have been driving from store to store and finding baby formula shelves empty for weeks now. But those are all the states that have Abbott as their WIC monopolist company. The other states are stocking their baby formula essentially just fine, because they awarded their contracts to one of the other companies. And because of the requirements placed on parents using WIC to pay for formula, this is the situation happening in grocery stores. Here's Michael Gay again, the owner and manager of Food Fresh.
In a rural area such as ours, probably 85-90% of my formula is WIC formula, which is just down to one type of formula. So even like today, for example, or my truck Monday, I got about 20 cases of Gerber formula in of different varieties, but that's not approved on WIC. And the Georgia WIC office just approved some substitutions for formulas that were subscribed by the doctor with the contract formula. So therein lies the problem: is there's no easy way to substitute that for the customer.
And he suggested some ways that Congress can fix this problem immediately.
WIC's rigid rules have made it difficult for the program to be responsive to critical shortages throughout the pandemic and now during the formula crisis. Substitutions may be easily available when situations like this arise. The emergency waivers instituted by the USDA during the pandemic have provided flexibility in some states, but those waivers were only available because of the pandemic. To prevent this issue from happening in the future, Congress should allow WIC vendors operating during severe supply shortages, disasters, or public health emergencies, areas to automatically substitute limited to WIC-approved products impacted by supply chain disruptions. The USDA should direct states to include product substitutions for WIC in their emergency preparedness plans. These changes would have allowed families to immediately switch to another formula in states with shortages, allowing for a smooth continuation of feeding infants.
And here's some good news. Congress basically did what he said. On May 21st, President Biden signed the Access to Baby Formula Act of 2022, which was actually a few days before Mr. Gay's testimony. But what the new law does is it allows the Secretary of Agriculture to waive WIC program requirements during supply chain disruptions. And the key requirements that can be waived include requirements that force store owners to only provide WIC recipients specific brands and sizes of baby formula, and they can waive maximum monthly allowances for baby formula. And so here's what happened in the real world as a result. Here's Robert Cleveland, the Senior Vice President of the Nutrition Business Unit for US and Europe at Mead Johnson, who again is the other company that is close to Abbott's size in the baby formula market in the United States.
We reached out and spoke to the USDA almost immediately, seeking flexibility, for example, in the sized format. And while that sounds small, it's very significant because what that means is the WIC consumer doesn't have to look for one particular size of product at the shelf. They can find any size at the shelf to fulfill their benefits with. And that's allowed us to continue production and step up to meet the requirements of those consumers. We've since worked with the USDA to find a number of other ways to flexibly administer the program, because really the focus for the WIC consumer is the same as the others, making sure she has safe access to formula and doesn't have to compete with non-WIC consumers to get it. So the more sizes, the more formats, the more manufacturers that the program can support, the more likely she is to have her needs met.
So this law is having real-world positive effects, making it possible for all the Abbott-captured customers that use WIC to get their baby formula to buy whatever formula they can find. Which, can I just say, I feel like they should be able to do anyway. Because I don't care if a parent is paying with WIC money or Federal Reserve notes or Bitcoin. That parent should get to buy the product that they want for their child. Baby formula is baby formula. There's no good reason for the price to be wildly different, and they probably wouldn't be if the companies had to compete with each other for half of the nation's customers who are trapped by legal bullshit into buying from just one company, which put, different names on their formulas to provide parents the illusion of choice, but they're trapped into one company's web. And so in my opinion, the law could have been better because this law only allows those stupid monopoly insuring laws to be waived in emergency situations. But let's take what we can get. It's better than what was law before, and it's making possible for parents to buy the formula they need from any company that has it available right now. And that's what we needed. As for how this became law, it became law in only 4 days. It passed the House of Representatives first, 414 to 9. Yes, there were 9 people in the House that voted no on this. And all no's were Republicans. People from the party of family values. And so let's just take a quick second here to name and shame these people because I cannot imagine what reason in the fucking world you would have for voting against this. But the people who had a reason were Andy Biggs of Arizona, Lauren Boebert of Colorado, Matt Gaetz of Florida, Louis Gohmert of Texas, Paul Gosar of Arizona, of course Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, Clay Higgins of Louisiana, Tom Massey of Kentucky, and Chip Roy of Texas. 7 out of those 9 names would appear on the top 20 of Jen Briney's list of the worst humans in Congress. The only ones that I don't despise are Tom Massey of Kentucky and Chip Roy of Texas, who I've featured on this show for doing ethical things. But I'm not going to take any time right now to remind you of the good things those guys did because fuck them for voting against making it possible for half of American parents to buy whatever baby formula they can find during a shortage. But then this bill moved on, went to the Senate, where it passed unanimously. And so apparently all the Senate Republicans still have their souls. But big picture, that law just dances around the edges of the problem here in the United States. It obviously didn't change the sole source contract problem that has created the baby formula cartel in this country. The law also didn't make it easier for products from countries with even higher standards than ours to sell their baby formula here in the United States. They can only do it in emergencies. Which brings me back to Operation Fly Formula. Which that name, Operation Fly Formula, like they're on a heroic mission or something. And not simply unrigging a small piece of the economy for a hot minute. But this industry, it's a problem worldwide. Something that I wasn't aware of until right now, until doing this episode. Because the propaganda of the industry, it worked on me. So get this. On the global scale, baby formula is produced in what they call the breast milk substitute industry. And until researching this episode, I had no idea that breast milk is recommended by the World Health Organization and the American Academy of Pediatrics over baby formula. I thought that breast milk and baby formula was just a matter of preference. And I know that I had definitely heard that baby formula in some cases is even better than breast milk. And I don't know why I thought these things, because you have to know this about me. I don't have kids. And so baby formula is not a topic I've ever really cared about because I have no baby. I never have. And I don't want to drink the stuff myself. And so baby drinks from boob, baby drinks from bottle. Don't care. You do you. But I have been a woman of breeding age for over 20 years now. My siblings and a majority of my cousins have had babies. So many of my friends have had babies. And so conversations about boob or bottle are kind of unavoidable, as are the Instagram and Google ads that pop up if one of those conversations is within earshot of my phone. And so that's just what filtered into my head, that boob or bottle doesn't really matter. Both are fine. But it turns out, no. Countries all over the world have banned advertising of baby formula because so much data has confirmed that breast milk is a superior option. But think about it. Breast milk is free. Baby formula has a profit motive. And episode after episode, I'm discovering that we live in a country that prioritizes corporate profits over everything. Nothing is sacred here. Certainly not our children, because children are what people love the most and will pay anything to keep them safe, to keep them plump and alive. And pretty much every baby that is not on the boob or being raised by a hippie is drinking formula. The parents are buying formula, and shareholders are getting a cut. But in over half the countries in the world, this is officially a problem for them. They want to encourage their citizens to breastfeed because that is what has been apparently proven to be the safest option for the baby. Which makes sense on its face to me, because that's how the human body is designed. It's how humans have survived this far. And so to try to expand breastfeeding globally and to prevent citizens/customers from being bullshitted by the breast milk substitutes industry, in 1981, so before I was even born, the World Health Assembly adopted the International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes. I'm going to call it the code from here on forth. But the code instructs what needs to be on the labels for baby formulas, requiring that the labels be in the local language, include hazard warnings, and they can't use images or words that indicate that baby formula protects the baby in any way. And most importantly, the code prohibits companies that sell their product in the countries that have adopted it from advertising their products to parents, healthcare professionals, and healthcare facilities. The code also prohibits the distribution of free samples, which get babies hooked on formula. It's like the Coke dealer that gives you a taste before he starts to charge. The code that prohibits advertising baby formula was being debated here in the late 1970s while it was being crafted on the global stage. And in 1978, then Senator Ted Kennedy of Massachusetts chaired a hearing in which executives from multinational baby formula corporations were called to testify about their business practices, specifically about their intention to market and sell baby formula in developing countries around the world. Here's how Senator Ted Kennedy opened that hearing.
Today we'll focus on one small element of their problems. We'll focus on the use of a product intended to nourish life, to enable infants to thrive and grow, to see how it can have the unintended effects of fostering malnutrition and spreading disease. We'll focus on the advertising, marketing, and promotion and the use of infant formula in developing nations. Can a product which requires clean water, good sanitation, adequate family income, and a literate parent to follow printed instructions be properly and safely used in areas where water is contaminated, sewage runs in the streets, poverty is severe, and illiteracy is high?
Now, what he said is important because I've kind of mentioned this, but baby formula needs to be prepared correctly. It's super important. The formula, the powdered kind anyway, needs to be mixed with water, specifically hot water, because the hot water kills bacteria. And so if the water isn't clean or the directions can't be read and therefore followed, the formula can be prepared incorrectly and the baby can get sick and even die. And I'm going into this old hearing because I just want to play for you the industry response to those concerns. This was Oswaldo Ballarin, who at the time was the president of Nestle's Brazil division.
The United States Nestle company has advised me that their research indicates this is actually an indirect attack on the free world's economic system, a worldwide church organization with the stated purpose of undermining the free enterprise system is in the forefront of this activity.
Now, you can't seriously expect We'll be in order. We'll be in order now, please.
Isn't it fascinating that that was laughable back then, and now we hear that stuff all the time and no one bats an eye? But back then, it was kind of gross and laughable that the concern of the multinational corporations, because it wasn't just Nestle, a representative from Abbott was sitting at the witness table too. But the important thing for them was the free enterprise system. A system that allows companies like theirs, stateless companies loyal to no country or population, to sell their products worldwide with few restrictions. And in case you doubt that they were more concerned with access to markets than the health of babies, check out this exchange with Senator Ted Kennedy.
Would you agree with me that your product should not be used where there is impure water? Yes or no?
we give all the instructions.
Just answer. What is your position?
Of course not, but we cannot cope with that.
Do you think that your product ought to be used in areas where there's illiteracy, vast illiteracy? Where there is illiteracy?
Well, that's
people can't read.
Yes, but that is very difficult to control, Senator, because you go in a region and they are not all illiterate. There are some who are. How can you control that the product goes to one rather than to the other?
Well, as I understand what you say is where there's impure water, it should not be used.
Yes.
Where the people are so poor that they're not going to realistically be able to continue to purchase that, and which is going to mean that they're going to dilute it to a point.
Yes.
Which is going to endanger the health, that it should not be used.
Yes.
All right, now, then my final question is what do you do, or what do you feel is your corporate responsibility to find out the extent of the use of your product in those circumstances in the developing part of the world? Do you feel that you have any responsibility?
We can't have that responsibility, sir. May I make a reference to...
you can't have that responsibility?
No. How can I be responsible for the water system?
Not talking. I'm talking about the use of your product in those areas.
But
do you feel that the corporation has any responsibility to know whether your product is being just occasionally used in those or widely used in those areas? Or do you feel that your corporation doesn't have any responsibility whatsoever?
With your permission, sir, even in the state of São Paulo, where we have 10 million people today, a great part of the water system is no good. I can't help it.
That's interesting to us. I mean, if we're just, if your company thinks the world's San Paulo's all over there, and therefore we don't have to care very much, that's interesting.
These are the type of people we're dealing with here. Formula is important. It feeds babies and it feeds people that can't eat anything else. But baby formula manufacturers, they make it for the money. And at the end of that debate, despite the ethically despicable priorities expressed to Congress that they said they were concerned about, the United States still did not adopt the code banning advertising of baby formula. In fact, in the World Health Organization in 1981, when the non-binding resolution endorsed the code was passed, it passed 118 to 1. Can you guess who the one was? Of course it was us, the United States. Yet another part of our recent history to be so proud of. And yet another example of our country doing the international bidding of multinational corporations. And there are quite a few reasons beyond the obvious, profit, why the multinational corporations want to be able to aggressively advertise formula in the United States and want our government on the sidelines in the effort to expand breastfeeding. For example, expanding breastfeeding would require mothers to be given paid time off of work, 6 months at least, to regularly feed their babies. That level of paid maternal leave is standard in other countries, but not here, where multinational corporations control our government and want their labor, their working women, to get our asses back to work as soon as possible after creating a new human. But on top of that, the companies also don't want to pay to maintain spaces in their offices where their working women can privately pump their breast milk or provide refrigerated space for them to store it. They don't want women taking so many breaks. Women are nothing more than labor to executives and the politicians who govern on executives' behalf. Breastfeeding costs them money. Baby formula makes them money. It really is as simple as that. And so the United States didn't support or adopt the anti-advertising code into our laws. No law in the United States prohibits the $55 billion a year baby formula industry from advertising as aggressively to American mothers as they please, which could help explain why I thought baby formula and breast milk were equally desirable options. I'm an American woman, and if something is repeated enough, we think it's true. And it apparently was repeated enough to work on me. And I don't want to get into some big debate about what's better for babies. If you use formula for your kids, if you like it, if you have a good reason, I don't doubt you. I'm not judging you. I still don't really care what you feed your children. That's your business. But the reason that I emphasize this is that more Americans than might otherwise be using baby formula are using baby formula because it is allowed to be aggressively advertised to American parents. Because all of the Congresses of my lifetime have been swayed by the idea that we should have a global free enterprise system that allows companies like Nestle, Abbott, all multinationals, to be free to sell their products globally with as few restrictions as possible. If that is the dominant theory behind our policy makings, then how could we possibly tell corporations that they're not allowed to advertise a product? How could we do that? After all, it's baby formula, not cigarettes, and the companies should be free. Because corporations are people, after all, according to the Supreme Court, that has been staffed with corporate moles during this century. And the First Amendment equals free speech for corporations. At least if you buy into corporations being people as the founder's intent, which I don't at all. But that is the governing policy in the United States. That's the mindset. And so there is no advertising ban here. And the result is that when there is a baby formula shortage specifically, that's a bigger problem than it might otherwise be in the United States, because these companies can and do advertise in print, television, and online. Because these companies can and do pay influencers to tell their followers to use baby formula and tell their followers that it's just as good as breast milk. Because these companies can and do give free formula to hospitals and healthcare providers, which leads parents to seek out that same brand of formula that they saw used by the hospitals. If the hospitals are using it, it must be okay. And by the way, if you're worried that you might be going to a hospital that does this, that accepts free samples from these companies, there is something that exists called the Baby Friendly Hospital Initiative, which is a certification program for hospitals in the United States that are enforcing the international code and don't allow this to go on inside their facilities. I put a link in the show notes for you so you can find a qualifying hospital near you. But my point is, more Americans than might otherwise use baby formula are hooked on the stuff because we allow aggressive marketing tactics that are not allowed in other less free enterprise-obsessed countries. More Americans are paying for a product instead of using their own milk for free because we allow ourselves to be labor instead of people. We accept jobs without parental leave. We accept jobs that don't allow us to take enough breaks to breastfeed. We accept being bullshitted by corporations who want to sell us things, who want to tell us things to get us to buy things, even if it's not the safest choice. We accept being deceived. I was deceived, and I resent it. And I think Ginger Carney of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and you know St. Jude, they have all the commercials that make you cry because they save kids and their parents from financial ruin when they get cancer. The St. Jude people are angels on earth. And here's their director of clinical nutrition testifying to Congress on May 25th.
One thing that we really haven't talked about is the WHO code for marketing breast milk substitutes. And that's what these formulas are. You know, they're breast milk substitutes. Right. So if we look at the WHO code, and other countries, other developed countries are abiding by the WHO code. And this gives guidelines for how companies can market their infant formulas in a safe way. So maybe we should go back to that and think about what is it about the WHO code that would benefit all of our families in the country so that they are assured when they do have to reach for infant formula, when breastfeeding cannot be an option or will not be an option, what are the things that are marketed directly to our families that tell them about the formula?
You know, you can't sell pills in this country that say they cure cancer on the label. You know, you can't lie about medical devices or medical cures. And so it makes me wonder, like, why do we allow baby formula to be advertised however the companies please in a way that implies that it's just as safe as breast milk? I think this is at least worth a national conversation, especially knowing that so many countries around the world have come to a different conclusion than we have. But even if we decide as a country that we want to join the other countries by preventing baby formula advertising, that would need to be policed by the food police, by the Food and Drug Administration. And man, they dropped the ball in this baby formula thing. The FDA is to baby formula as the Uvalde police is to babies. Bad at protecting them. And in the hearings, the FDA acknowledged, straight up admitted, that they were too slow to act, and much of the hearings focused on their unacceptably slow response. But I'm not going to focus on that. I did put the full hearings, as I always do, in the show notes for you if you want to dive down that rabbit hole and get all the details about how the FDA did a terrible job policing baby formula in the last few years. But the closure of the Sturgis plant was just one, albeit a big one, but just one recent event in an ongoing supply chain problem that was caused by the failures of a global supply chain structure. And so focusing on the policing failures at this one plant is to miss the big picture, because this is a global-sized picture. Here's Representative Buddy Carter of Georgia questioning Chris Calamari, who is the executive from Abbott.
Okay, and the supply chain issues, is that because some of the ingredients were coming from other countries?
Representative, yes. So global supply chains are such that we have ingredients coming from global sources, and that is the nature of our supply chain.
So these companies get their ingredients from all over the world, and there was a supply chain problem, started years ago. And as we're seeing right now, the government has the ability to adjust systems to get products to where they need to go. Operation Fly Formula. Our government is powerful. It can do things. But the government can't do shit about a supply chain problem that they don't know about. Here's Robert Califf again, the commissioner of the FDA.
You would be surprised to know there's no just-in-time system where all the FDA employees can see what's going on. What we really need is access to the information that the manufacturers have about each of their individual supply chains. They each have their individual supply chains, but there is no national system to make sure the supply is getting where it needs to go.
And why doesn't such a system exist? That's what Representative Kim Schreier of Washington was curious about when she questioned Robert Califf of the FDA.
Is there any early warning system for products like baby formula, not just the ingredients, but for formula itself, where manufacturer would let you know if they're running short or anticipate a shortage?
No, there is not such a warning system. We've repeatedly asked for that authority and have not been granted it. The industry, by and large, has opposed it.
Congress has not allowed it because industry has opposed it. Yet another example of Congress making decisions that benefit multinational corporations. In this case, not giving law enforcement the tools it needs to even see what's going on. Forget about doing anything proactive about it. But here's the thing, even if a system were funded and authorized by Congress, the government still needs to have data in the system to analyze, to spot the problems in order to be proactive. And that's a problem too. Here's Susan Main again of the FDA.
We have been in discussion with the infant formula manufacturers throughout COVID, but discussion is not the same thing as data. And we do not have the authorities to demand data from the companies to get necessarily all the information that you would want to have to really monitor these supply chains, as Dr. Califf indicated.
Okay. We're leaving it all up to the private sector. The official policy, once again, we've seen this so many times, is to trust the private sector. To trust for-profit multinationals to essentially police themselves, and in this case, police and manage their supply chains, even in the case of products as critical to lives as baby formula. Now, the empty shelves in this country pretty much speak for themselves as to how that policy is shaking out. But to add to that evidence, here's FDA Commissioner Califf again, because this problem goes beyond baby formula.
You would think that a critical industry like this would have resilience plans, redundancy, but we don't even have legal authority right now to require that the firms have a plan for potential failures and resilience. That's something we've asked Congress for every year for a while, and we're asking for it again, so I hope that it happens this time. I'd also add that this is not unique to this industry. We are seeing this across the entire device and medical supply industry with frequent failures, as exemplified by the 60 Minutes show and the contrast medium problem that I talked about. We have gone to a just-in-time, large single-source contracts that lead to a lack of diversification in the industry, and the industry has fought us tooth and nail on requiring that there be insight into their supply chains, so that the sum of all of the industries leads to the avoidance, the preemption. We'd like to be able to stress test and prevent these things from happening rather than waiting until they happen and then scrambling.
Now, in that clip, he mentioned a 60 Minutes episode about drugs, and I put a link to the full segment in the show notes for you. But just so you know exactly what he's talking about, here's the intro to that segment. I think this sums up the issue pretty well.
American hospitals have been living with serious drug shortages for more than a decade. Most days, nearly 300 essential drugs can be in short supply. After months of investigation, we found it's not a matter of supply and demand. The drugs are needed and the ingredients are easy to make. It's that pharmaceutical companies have stopped producing many life-saving generic drugs because they make too little profit. Yet year after year, the government stays on the sidelines as companies take drug production offline and doctors worry the shortages are compromising patient care.
So it's not just baby formula. It's not even just food. It's also drugs, medicines that we need. But that's a rabbit hole for another day. But the bottom line is this. Here's FDA Commissioner Califf.
Across the industry we regulate, we're seeing evidence that the just-in-time distribution system, market concentration, and sole source contracting are leading to shortages. Multiple reports to Congress call for improved supply chain management. Until regulatory agencies have digital access to critical supply chain information and personnel to do the work, we'll continue to react to supply chain disruptions rather than intervening to prevent them.
And so that brings me to the Access to Baby Formula Act of 2022, which was signed in mid-May. And it did make some changes in regards to information sharing. The new law requires the Secretary of Agriculture and Secretary of Health and Human Services to create a, quote, memorandum of understanding, unquote, to, quote, promote, unquote, not require, promote, information sharing between their federal agencies about supply chain disruptions. Information sharing within government is not the problem here. The problem is that the private sector, the multinational corporations, are choosing what they will share with the government about supply chain disruptions. The problem is, once again, that the private sector is empowered. If this Congress really wanted to solve this problem, the requirement would be that any company granted a legal monopoly on baby formula or a legal monopoly on any product would be required, not optional. They would be required to share any supply chain disruptions with the government. We need requirements for information sharing put on the private sector. No one asked for promotion of information sharing within government. Congress is, once again, refusing to govern the private sector. These cowards are once again dancing around the problem and refusing to solve it because they refuse to upset corporate donors. And so in this regard, the Access to Baby Formula Act is fucking useless. They did nothing at all to help the FDA do their jobs. Which brings me to the thing I'm actually most concerned about after watching these hearings and reading these documents. Because the FDA's problems go far beyond baby formula. This isn't just an isolated problem with one plant or one product. The FDA is failing on a systemic level when it comes to food inspection. And it's not just because they're being handcuffed in the ways I just described. They're failing all food inspection because they've kind of been set up that way. Here is Brian Ronholm, who is the Director of Food Policy at Consumer Reports.
The evidence suggests that the agency was too slow to act, failed to take this issue seriously, and was not forthcoming with information to parents and caregivers. The infant formula crisis exposed a greater structure and culture problem that has long existed at FDA. This was merely one symptom of the overall problem, and it is clear that confidence in the food program at FDA is eroding. A big reason for this is the food program has second-class status within FDA, and it's resulted in serious problems. The FDA also lacks a single, full-time, fully empowered expert leader of all aspects of the food program. As you know, in recent decades, most FDA commissioners have been medical specialists who naturally focus on the programs impacting medical products. This is certainly warranted considering the impact these programs have on public health, and the pandemic is a perfect example of this. However, this usually results in intense competition for the commissioner's time and support, and focus on the food program is typically what has suffered under this dynamic. It has become impossible for an FDA commissioner to possess the bandwidth to provide leadership and accountability to a set of offices that regulate 80% of our food supply.
And this is having real-world consequences. And unfortunately, I have another example of harm being done to our babies. The Committee on Oversight and Reform Subcommittee on Economic and Consumer Policy released a report last year that found that many commercial baby foods from companies you've heard of, so Nurture, Beechnut, Hain, and Gerber, are, quote, tainted with significant levels of toxic heavy metals, including arsenic, lead, cadmium, and mercury, unquote. And those were the companies that complied with the committee's document requests. Walmart, Campbell, and Sprouts basically told the committee to go fuck itself and is somehow allowed to get away with that. And the committee expressed concern that, quote, their lack of cooperation might be obscuring the presence of even higher levels of toxic heavy metals in their baby food products, unquote. I put the report in the show notes for you so that you can check out the specifics, because it's terrifying. And I can tell you that even after just skimming this report, if I had a baby, I would be investing in a high-powered, like, Jamba Juice level blender and staying the fuck away from all baby foods produced by multinational corporations. But if they are that careless with baby foods, again, the committee got this information from the company's own internal documents. They know. But we need to be concerned about our adult foods too, because if they'll allow poison in baby food, what will they allow to slip into you? And so what can be done about this by the government? Well, the advice to Congress was consistent. Here's Brian Ronholm again.
Splitting out the food safety functions of the agency as it exists now and creating a separate agency while still remaining under the HHS umbrella. That certainly would be, I think, an effective approach that would get to the issues that I think everyone has become aware of during this crisis.
And at least one powerful member of the Democratic Party in the House is on board. Here's Representative Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut, who is the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, which is one of the most powerful committees in the House. It's the one that doles out the money.
We now have 15 agencies at the federal level who deal with some form of food safety. The principal ones are USDA and FDA. It should be one single agency.
But unfortunately, I don't think a lot of Americans are aware of the lack of focus on food safety at the FDA, because I know I had no idea, and I watch this stuff pretty regularly. Creating a new agency in this era of, government is always the baddie, tear it down, abolish the agencies. Creating a new agency in this climate, that's a heavy lift, and it will require demands by voters, which requires informed voters. And both of those, right now, we don't have. But this episode is a start, I guess. And so if you think this information is worth knowing, please share this episode and support the show financially if you can. Because this information is valuable. This is information that helps you and I make decisions about how much to trust our government to do its job. It helps you and I to know what areas we can feel safe in. And unfortunately, I'm finding that it's not many these days. And it also lets us know what areas we really need to watch out for ourselves. And unfortunately, food safety has now been added to that list for me. And that's because of this show. This information is valuable. And you're not being given this information by corporate media because they get their value. They get their money from their customers, which are the corporations that pay them via ad money. And you don't bite the hands that feed you. They don't bite the corporate hands. And so I refuse to be fed by them. And so I can bite them all I want. And you benefit by getting information that all advertising-funded shows are incentivized to simply not share. And so if you want this show to continue, and if you want more information like this, the value for value business model is the only way that's going to happen. And I need you to participate in it. So please visit congressionaldish.com and pay whatever amount you consider fair for the value you've received in whatever payment method works best for you. That's the reason to support the show, the information. But I do have some extras for people who pledge to support the show on an ongoing basis on Patreon. On Patreon, you get all of these episodes with the golf swing sensor eliminated. We just let all the fucks fly over there. And there are also some bonus episodes. And the bonus episodes are just all kinds of stuff. And I'll give you a little taste of a recent bonus episode in a second. But I nicknamed that Patreon feed my green room. But just a little warning. If you're one of those people who likes this show and you like the information, but you tolerate me as the host, or if you hate me as a host, I know you exist. Well, the bonus green room episodes, they're not for you. These are interviews with my friends and coworkers and chats with my husband about our digital nomad ways and random musings from me. This is a feed where I get to hang out with the people who help me do this show. It's my private room, and if you're willing to help me do my work, I let you in. But if you're someone who can't stand me, maybe another payment method is a better option for you, because there's more of me back there. Because you might not believe this, but some people, they actually like me. But But you don't have to pay through Patreon. You don't have to get into the green room. That's just one thing. It's an extra thing I'm offering. You can enjoy the public feed and just support the show because you're not missing anything super important if you're not in the green room. Although I do think that conversations back there are interesting. But if you don't want it, fine. You can pay per month or per week or whatever you choose using PayPal or Zelle. You can kick us Venmos whenever you fancy. You can buy a Congressional Dish shirt in our store because we do appreciate you acting as our walking human billboards. And we even still accept cryptocurrency if you want to buy us the dip. But every time you get to a cumulative $535, which is $1 for every member of Congress, you can add your name or an anonymous credit to the episode you are most proud to have supported and be listed as an executive producer on that episode alongside me. Now, unfortunately, today, we don't have any notes from any new executive producers because we don't have any new executive producers. And so I'd just like to take a second and thank all existing producers, everyone who has ever contributed to this show, to this business model, to making this information at least more accessible to people that don't have time to watch 3 hearings and read a law and read a bunch of articles. Like, I think this is a more accessible package and you're helping me do it. And so thank you to all producers and especially executive producers for your support for the show so far. And, you know, one of the things I love about the executive producer credits is that it really does inform me about what episodes are the most valuable, literally, to the Congressional Dish community. And so, since I don't have any notes for you today from an executive producer, I want to share with you the list of episodes that have more than one executive producer and are therefore, at least as of right now, considered the most valuable. All of these have 2 executive producers. The most valuable episodes are the World Trade Organization episode number 102, which was really when my mind was made aware of this global economic system. Like, I feel like that episode was life-changing for me. I see everything different after that episode. So I think that deserves to be on the list. Also, the sanctions episode, sanctions about Russia, North Korea, and Iran. I think it's relevant to this day because that's the law that's being used to enact sanctions right now against Russia. That's episode 156. Also, fan favorite, National Endowment for Democracy. If you don't know what that is, you should listen to episode 186. It's a part of the State Department. It's a regime change arm of the State Department. That's another one that blew my mind. So definitely check that out. Episode 205 is on the list. That's the nuclear waste storage episode. Turns out that the people that like nuclear power, there's a problem because we still don't know what to do with the waste. And it's just being stashed all over the country. And so if you want details on that, I think it should be a factor when we talk about nuclear power. Good episode. I loved this episode. Minerals are the new oil, episode 218. Really dives into the power dynamics and how they're changing on the global economic scale. This one I was kind of surprised about, but long COVID, Congressional Dish 233 also has 2 executive producers. And I think that's an episode that's just going to be more and more relevant as we go forward. But that episode was produced pretty early. I felt like this was the first time I had been made aware of long COVID. And so it's kind of fascinating to go back and see what the first reactions to that being a part of this COVID experience were, both in Congress and with our healthcare professionals. This episode is also still quite relevant. Hunting Domestic Terrorists was the 237th episode. And that was when I went and looked at all of the bills that the Democrats are crafting in the wake. It's not in the wake of, because some of these were kind of old, but the Democrats after the riot at the Capitol want to expand essentially spying powers. There's a few bills in there, so I don't want to get into it. But if you're curious about what those proposals are, that's where I read them. It's where I outlined those bills for you. And then Congressional Dish 238 is on the list, Losing Afghanistan. That's where I tell the story of the Afghanistan war right after it ended. And then finally, Congress Saves the Postal Service. And I happen to know, we have to put a little asterisk on that because I know that one of those executive producers picked it because that was the 250th episode, a major milestone for Congressional Dish. But still, great episode, and the Postal Service. Good things happened. So we have one episode on the list where good things happened. And so that's always nice. All of those episodes have 2 executive producers. And so one more executive producer on any of those would push that episode into the top spot of most valuable episode. And if that happens, I'll be sure to let you know. But what I'm seeing by looking at this list is a pattern of foreign policy type episodes really dominating the most valuable episodes list. And so I am keeping that in mind as I'm looking at topics for the next few months. If you feel differently, that those are not the most valuable episodes, I got to tell you, I look at this list every week and it really does affect the direction of the show. So yeah, I'm keeping your investments in mind. They affect how the show is produced. And speaking of the direction of the show, I do want to give a shout out to journalist Matt Stoller. He has a Substack that focuses specifically on monopoly issues in the United States. And his article about the baby formula shortage was one of the catalysts from this episode. A lot of the things I told you about the monopoly powers were from his work. And so I just want to let you know that his newsletter is one of my favorites. It is so worth your time. I learned so much every week from him. And again, his name is Matt Stoller. You can find him on Substack. And again, I want to thank Barbara Hardin for taking the time to just let me know some things about baby formula so I didn't have to learn from scratch because I knew nothing. So to have her spend some time with me and help me understand the bigger dynamics of baby formula, why it matters, and what's happening on the global scale. Barbara was a huge help with that. Barbara's also a huge help because she's Claire's mom, and Claire is my assistant who I adore and I love working with. And so, yeah, Barbara is key to this podcast for many reasons. So thank you so much for helping me out and for creating a wonderful human. Okay. So before I wrap this up, I'm going to give you a little green room preview. A really fun episode I put in the green room was with my friend Annalise. She is so smart and so wonderful. And she met me in my hotel room in the Bay Area before I flew out of town a few weeks ago. And Annalise is someone who owns guns and is very knowledgeable about history. She has a PhD. And so we sat down to talk about guns, and then we veered off into so many different topics, including our friends and our personal life. But we had a really fun conversation, and here is just a little taste of our conversation so you can see if you want to jump into the Patreon and hear more of it. Here you go.
I have spent a lot of time thinking about gun ownership in Black communities. Because in the early abolition and even in the early civil rights movement, before Bayard Rustin introduced the concept of nonviolent resistance to Martin Luther King, the Black civil rights movement was armed, heavily armed. Frederick Douglass said something, I don't know the exact quote, but it's like the best thing that a Black man can have to protect his freedom is a gun. Because before gun control laws existed, because we didn't even have gun control laws until Reagan and was the governor of California. At all? Yeah, the only gun control laws that existed were Black people can't have them.
I didn't know that. I didn't know this history. And so Annalise schooled me on some history on gun control and American history and palm trees. So if you want to hear a interesting and fun conversation, go join us in the green room. You can do that on patreon.com. So like I said, I'm looking at what episodes have been valuable to you right now. I don't have a topic for the next episode, but what I do have is the 4th of July holiday coming up. And so I'm going to give my team a break for that week. And so I will be back with a new episode in mid-July so that they can enjoy the holiday. But I will have a new episode for you in mid-July. If there's anything in particular that producers want to know about, hit me up because I don't know what to geek out on just yet. All right. Thanks so much for listening and for sharing the show and supporting this work. I adore you all, and I will talk to you soon. Happy 4th of July. Bye.
We're surrounded now by liars coming at us through our TV screens.
We don't have a domestic spying program.
They're content to fight in black and white despite the many in-betweens. We got a president who plays with the facts. With the facts. And then he waves a flag to cover his tracks. As if a lie is alright. In the end, he'll justify the means. Now we are so damn tired of being lied to.
The polar ice caps aren't going away.
We don't think we can deny it anymore. You can stick to your story if you think it flies. But we're not keeping quiet anymore. We are so damn tired of being lied to.
Government jobs consume the profits of the private sector.
We don't think we can deny it anymore. You can stick to your story if you think it flies. But we're not keeping quiet anymore. Now we're not keeping quiet.
These bills represent common sense, bipartisan solutions that actually solve problems.